the bot up in here. Hello, everybody on our various live audiences. This is the Indie Game Lunch Hour. We're getting set up to begin. All right, we've got Craig recording for us. And let me get a soundboard in here. Hello, soundboard. Wow. Not yet. All right, we're officially ready. Here we go. Oh, wait. Also, Mike Gray. I'm assuming I'm saying that right?
You got it right.
All right, cool. I usually check, but this one I hadn't checked because I figured. All right, here we go.
Pretty straightforward.
Welcome, Game Dev Adventures, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour, the best game dev podcast on the planet. Today, we are talking with Mike Gray, a content creator at Board Games for One, about creative collaboration in indie games.
All right.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
In our live magical podcast, we give game developers the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. As always, I'm your host, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster here at the Indie Game Academy, and joining me today is Mike Gray. Mike Gray is a content creator at Board Games for One, and today we're going to be talking about I love this, a little bit of alliteration here, cracking the code to creator collaboration in indie games, basically how to collaborate in an indie development studio. Mike, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here. What are you having for lunch today?
I am having coffee in a Batman cup.
Nice.
That is my lunch today. Maybe something a little bit later on, maybe stir fry, but I got a few hours still.
Ooh.
So is that coffee you got right there?
It is indeed. Mine is not a Batman cup though. Am I missing something? Does it add to the experience?
No, you're good. You're good. This is very childish. Yeah.
We're game developers.
Thank you for having me.
Childish is A+. Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Mike. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Mike, you come to us from the board game world. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Yeah. So it has been a little while. I can't actually remember the last episode where we had a board game developer on the show. So it's always good to check in on the physical design world where we aren't just doing video games, because so much of what we do, so much of what we know about game design comes from the board game world. I, in fact, relatively recently bought a version of the Royal Game of Ur. Are you familiar with what that is?
Ur?
Yes,
I know the game Ur. Is the full title just Ur?
As far as I've heard it, it is the Royal Game of Ur, but I think people might just call it Ur. It's a little track racing game.
I've seen it. Yes. I haven't played it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating little game. It is the third oldest game in the world, beaten only by Mancala and checkers. It is older than chess, and it is honestly a really delightful game. I have been having such a fun time playing it. Actually, with my dad, randomly, we shadowed each other, we rolled dice. We pretend that we're ancient Babylonians. So yes, so much of what we know about game design is from the board game world. So I'm excited to jump into this space with you, Mike. But before we get there, as always, we like to start with the origin story. So Mike, tell us who you are, where you are in your career in the game industry, and how you got there.
Okay. So I'm Mike Gray, just like introduced there. As far as breaking into it, this is obviously sideways. I'm more in the board game side of things. I got into board games largely through video games. I was more of a video gamer back in the Sega Saturn, PlayStation, era of games. But I saw Catan once, and I saw this game on the shelf once called Nemesis. It looked so cool, but it was big and expensive looking. And I'm like, I don't have gamer friends, right? I don't have video gamer friends. I don't have board gamer friends.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, at Walmart one day, I saw this game called Horrified. It was only $30, and it said 1 to 4 players. I was like, 1-player game. What's that? I tried it out. I liked it. I was like, there should be more 1-player board games. It's a video game, just tactile. Back then, that wasn't that long ago, 2018 or something. There weren't resources online to help you find solo board games, a 1-player board game. So I had a hard time getting started. And I would create 1-player modes for the board games that I would buy. And then I thought, just before COVID hit, I decided to try to make a YouTube channel. And I made a video, and it took me a long time, and it was horrible. It was awful. But I thought I want to make a channel to make it easier for people to find these solo board games. If you enjoy this gaming hobby, but you don't have a big game group, or you actually just really enjoy the calming, like enjoying it by yourself, So now there's all kinds of different channels.
Mhm.
But right when I started, it was right when there weren't any of those. So I have been to throw a bunch of cold water on this and to make it nice and real. I'm going to be different than if you had a large content creator on. And that's largely why Nick Gurley, who I've worked with
Mhm.
with his board game publishing company, recommended this, because I'm smaller and more independent,
Mhm.
which means that this is both a side gig, but it is also a very real business. And people like me, if I don't know about indie and video games, I imagine it's going to be similar.
Mhm.
We're actually, these smaller ones are going to be your initial points of contact. So right now I'm actually at a point where I'm able to have a couple sponsorships. I work with indie publishers, and I have a couple large publishers, which for a channel my size is pretty darn good. So I'm doing all right.
Awesome. That's really exciting. Yeah, the solo board game
Either I lost you or my earphones went out. I can hear you. Well, I used to be an educator, and that never really leaves you. And at the beginning, really, of any lesson, it's your goal. So we need to have the goal. So if you are looking, if you're developing an indie game, whether it's a board game or a video game, you need to build a relationship. And this goes along with something you mentioned in previous podcast. You need to develop a relationship early on with the smaller indie content creators if you can, because if you find a good one that is consistently getting better and growing, well, they're going to grow with you, which means that their network grows, their options grow, and since you have that relationship with them, your options grow.
Mhm.
So you want to try to get in there early, because you're going to have a hard time getting straight to the larger content creators unless you're willing to pay a good amount of money, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So the first is build a long-term relationship starting now
Mhm.
with your small indie content creators that you actually think you can build a relationship with.
Mhm. That's a wonderful tip. So, when we released our board game, we also shipped a board game. I am a video game developer, but I've shipped exactly one board game. A fascinating level of challenge that the video game world definitely doesn't deal with, for sure. But when
Can
we,
I ask what game?
yeah, it's called Tailmore. It's a tabletop dungeon crawler that an app acts as your dungeon master inside of. So nobody knows what's happening next in the adventure. The app tells you what happens next. So
Look that up later. Thank you.
of course, yeah, little self promo, I guess. So definitely building out those relationships early is something that a lot of developers I think don't do. I think one of the biggest questions to ask there is how early is early? Are they building relationships with these YouTubers, streamers, etc. from like the day they start building their game? Should they have some kind of representative demo before they reach out to folks? At what point do you start reaching out?
As soon as you decide that you want to develop a game,
Mm.
because you start building your team as soon as as soon as you decide I have this goal, I want to develop a game, you have to build a team, period, right? And so you want to have people in mind for that team. It might change as you go, that's fine. But a content creator is going, or whatever you want to call them, but on all the platforms, that's usually how we refer to ourselves. They're going to be an integral part of it, especially in indie. So as soon as you decide, start looking at what platform do you think is going to promote yours the most? Is it going to be short form content? Is it going to be, your YouTube shorts and your Instagram reels and TikToks and all that stuff? Or is it going to be long form? Like, what's best for your industry? Look at that. And then you can start looking at, okay, what content creator do I connect with? When I watch this, am I actually watching and I'm like, this is fun, I like this? That's someone you want to build a relationship with.
Okay. It's interesting you talk about it as building a team. So you are thinking of these influencers, these people that you're connecting with and building with as team members, as integral parts of the team. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep. So like I've gotten the chance to work with Nick with Sea Stories Creative. I am not a part of his team necessarily, but I consider him, he's a part of my team as well as all of my publishers are, because I have nothing if I can't work with them. So whether you want to consider it like independent contractor type of team, it's still a team.
Yeah, I love that as a concept, and that's already a bit of a mentality shift, I think, for a lot of the people who will be listening to this podcast and will be in this room. It's easy to think of an influencer as like a marketing stream. This is a place that I put my dollars, like a Facebook ad might be. But I think the difference between a Facebook ad and an influencer is that the influencer is like a real human being instead of an algorithm, and is somebody that you can talk with, build with, get excited with. So that already is a shift. I think universally, this is a truth in game development, that the more fun you're having during the process, the better the product tends to be. And so working with those influencers early, I think also allows you to just have a good time with them and shoot the shit a little bit and talk about what videos might be cool and what content might be cool. And I also think the earlier you involve somebody, the more they can have a say in what your game becomes and the more invested they're therefore going to feel in that game. What is
there's a time as it gets larger where it may become more of just an advertising thing. But in the beginning, in your origins, which we know is the coziest, warmest part, when you get to have these close relationships, it does pay off at that level.
I love that. So how much give us a bit of like the boot camp on starting to build these relationships, hard numbers and strategies as much as possible. So like, what are the main choices I have to make? How do I reach out to these folks? How do I maintain a relationship with these folks? What are some of the like steps to put in place before launch? Give us that boot camp version.
Okay. Don't be overly deceived by numbers. Okay, so subscriber counts, things like that. Usually when you're looking to connect, you're going to be like, I want the highest subscriber count. View counts are way more important. It's important to look at view counts, but you have to also realize the reality of your project that you're making is unknown. So even if you submit your project to a 150,000 subscriber channel, you're not going to get 150,000 views. You might get 1,000. Okay, because nobody's ever heard of it. That's just the way, and I'm speaking from a YouTube long form. So most of my stuff is going to be YouTube related. Short form is another world, so I'm not going to speak too much to that. Where you may have a smaller channel. So when Nick reached out to me, I'm only at maybe 4,500 subscribers right now, right? In board gaming, full time would be 30,000 though, so that gives some perspective. You don't actually have to get massive. But so he reached out when I was in the 2,000 range subscribers, had me do a video for him. And that got maybe up to, I don't know, maybe 400 views or something like that. Nothing massive, but actually for an indie board game, pretty good. Now he had another channel that's well over 100,000. And they got, I think, maybe 1,000 views. So they got more views, but it's, when you compare whatever the differences in cost, things like that, I would say just be careful not to be too deceived by the subscriber count. What you do want to look for, if you want to do a little research to see if they're going to be growing with you, is look back, go all the way back to their beginning video. You don't have to watch the whole thing, I get that, but you look at the thumbnail, look at a chapter that interests you. and then, you know, go a few videos up and up and up, and look if they're growing. Like, are they improving? Are the comments, you know, is there actual interaction? So I might be a small creator, but I might have 150 comments. So you've got good interaction.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, you can reach out to a creator and request for um, harder numbers. Like, do they have any evidence of, if it was a Kickstarter, how many people clicked on the link to the Kickstarter?
Hmm.
When you're a channel my size, that we'll do it, we'll find it and we'll do it. I wouldn't say that's very common.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually you're looking for, is the creator growing and are people interacting?
Mm-hmm. Amazing advice already. That's I had a similar experience with our board game and the YouTubers that we reached out to. We targeted YouTube above all else. We worked with a couple of different people. The most expensive video we paid for, I think, was $800 at the time. This is a couple of years ago now. And it was with a channel, I think, with like 200,000 subscribers. The actual click-through, because we used unique links on each of these so that we could track how they each performed. The actual click-through from that video was like maybe the 4th or 5th best performer out of the 10 people that we worked with. So it was like very middle of the pack compared to the other videos, despite the fact that this video was the most expensive and in the biggest channel. And the top performer was like a sort of middling channel. It was like 25 or 30,000 subs. But I think
That's
part
a
of
sweet spot. Yep.
Yeah, I think part of what happened there too is that his tone and voice sort of matched who we were best. So that's maybe my next question. How do you identify who you work with? It's easy to say, I'm making a board game, so I'm going to go talk to a board game YouTuber. But what else might you consider, like cultural fit, tone fit? Let's say I'm making a board game about birds. Do I go talk to a bird influencer in addition to board game influencers? You know, how do I target who I actually talk to?
Oh, your target audience. Okay, so if you're in the board gaming industry, you could go. So an example of a bird game. Let's say there was a game called Wingspan, which is one of the biggest board games. Yeah. Let's say it's Wingspan. It's a bird game.
Yeah.
One of the best-selling games like ever made. Okay. Yeah. Whether or not they reached out to bird influencers, I don't know, but I do have a bird shop not far down the road on the beach there, and they do not have Wingspan in that bird shop, and they have board games. So you may not hit that kind of crossover with like bird watchers may not be into board games, so maybe not. Board gamers will play, and this may be similar in your indie games. They will play a lot of different themes and things like that. So I don't think you have to look too much for super specific theme, but it's the same thing as before. Like, you just do a little bit of homework, a little bit of digging into what have they featured, and not just what have they featured, but what have they featured that actually worked. And you can be shallow too. Like, what do they wear? You know, do I connect with the whole appearance? Not everybody's going to connect with my appearance. You know, some of the channels have a much more calming, soothing. They've got nature sounds. They got a nice tree in the background, very cozy and wonderful. Mine will have a little more of an 80s vibe. So look for vibes. If you connect with that vibe, and I don't know a way to really teach that other than advice I got when you're writing a book or when you're reading a book. Like, if a reader ever if they ever get to a sentence and they don't want to read the next one, then you didn't make it interesting enough. All right. So it's the same thing when you're watching the creator or when you're looking at their posts and things like that. If you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to the next section, or I'm looking forward to the next video, you may consider that may be someone that you can connect with, and they have successfully made content in something else that is at least similar. So if it's not a bird game, well, then was it a similar mechanic? You know, was it, engine building in the game? And mine is actually spaceships, but it's the exact same mechanic on a different theme. Then you're probably going to be totally fine.
That's really... Yeah, that does help a lot. Also, complete aside, let me just derail us for a hot second. Have you heard before that apparently vibes is a millennial term and that the other generations judge us for the term vibes? I learned this recently and I'm upset about it because I love that word.
I'm comfortable with being judged.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
True. You can't take my vibes away from me.
I am on the cusp. I am the eldest of the millennials. I'm almost X.
Uh-huh,
I just didn't quite make it over to X.
Right.
So,
But you
I'm
have
way up
millennial
there.
vibes.
I've got millennial vibes.
Right. Amazing. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, to be totally honest, because it's this interesting balance when you are trying to target a real group of people. I work with so many people who are just getting started in games, and one of those really consistent stumbling blocks that fresh game developers make is they try to make a game for everyone. They try to make a game with too broad of an audience, and what that winds up doing inevitably is that they're kind of diluting the game. They wind up making it just not as strong for any one group of human beings. And so I suspect that the relationship to finding a YouTuber or an influencer that'll work well, that their audience will also love your game, is very similar. Trying to identify who is going to be obsessed with this and who is going to love this game rather than just who might be vaguely interested in it. And I think, honestly, it's a pretty great idea to just see if the channel feels right to you, if the vibes feel right to you, and then check as well what videos do well, have done well traditionally on that channel, and if your games fit those categories as well. That seems like a great place
And
to start.
production value, like look at their actual production value, not what the thumbnail looks like. Not so if you're looking at a YouTuber, and okay, so don't make this mistake also. So you're looking at a YouTuber, you want a YouTube video, but you found the person on Instagram. Well, their Instagram might be a much higher production than their longer form video. So be very careful that if you want short form, look at their short form. If you want pictures, look at their pictures. If you want long form, look at it. And if it's important to you to have 4K shots of this is board games, so it'd be 4K shots of games, but whatever it would be even for a video game, the camera quality, make sure you look at all those things in the actual form that you want it in, because they don't always match.
Awesome. So do you have any recommendations on how to literally reach out to these folks? What do your first messages look like? Are you coming to them with a pitch, with numbers? Are you just kind of opening the conversation and saying hi? What does reaching out to potential influencers look like?
You got all kinds of flexibility. Understand who you're talking to. When you're reaching out to indie content creators, this is either a hobby or a second job that they are working toward building into something that may be, part-time or full-time. They may never want to go there. So first of all, know who you're reaching out to. They're a little more chill. Okay. So you want to be personable. You can reach out with, my favorites are personally through email. So if your content creator has means of contact listed, so say you're on Instagram or something and they have an email or something to reach out, or you go to their channel about page on YouTube and they've got their email, use that means. You can do direct messages and things like that as well to get things started, but it almost always goes further through email. And I've had it done a couple different ways that were successful and a couple ways that were kind of like failed. The successful, there were two ways. One was very specific, numbers and a specific request of what was wanted. And I'll throw Nick under the bus. That was Nick.
Right, so that sounds like Nick.
He said it was great. No, it was great. It was very professional. He was like, hey, we have this game. It's a solo game. And we've enjoyed your content where you feature solo games. So I know he knows. And please don't fake your way through this and watch like 5 seconds of something and be like, I really like that. You can read right through that and I'll respond because I have to, but I won't want to do anything. No, it was sincere. Like, you've done some homework and we have this project coming up on Kickstarter on this date. We need this content made for this time period. And he asked, do you have a terms sheet? I didn't have a terms sheet. I reached out to larger, 25, 30, 40,000 subscriber channels. They were like, oh, we don't have terms sheets. I Googled it. I learned how to make a terms sheet. I personally, now I loved that. That's more what I'm used to actually coming, even when I was teaching, I taught corporate for a while. And so I was like, okay, I'm going back to something I know. That was totally fine by me. And I appreciated how specific it was. He sent me, why can't I think of what it's called? Assets He sent me some of the assets for the game so I could see. I saw, oh, okay, this is his picture quality, so I know what he's expecting, and I want it to match that. That was very helpful. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was able to produce something that they liked and build a relationship.
Mm.
On the other hand, I've had it successful where somebody has reached out just very, very briefly. And actually, the larger the publisher, the more brief it is. So maybe 2 sentences once you get to like your Awaken Realms types publishers. But where they'll reach out, they'll usually through email are the most successful ones for me anyway. They'll reach out and they'll say, hey, we really enjoy your solo board gaming content, and we have this game that has a 1-player mode. This is the link to something about it. If it looks interesting to you, let me know. Now, I don't like that because I don't want to have to click the link to find out about it. I'm going to click the link, but tell me something. So when they tell me at least a little something, then that's fine too. If that's all you want to do, as long as you let me know what you have, then it's just going to take maybe 10 emails instead of like with Nick, where bam, bam, 2 emails, we're good. We got everything done. Either one of those is totally fine as long as you're speaking clearly. Again, your indie creators are going to be much more chill.
Okay.
Is that might be another millennial slang.
Chill, maybe. I don't know about that one. So it sounds like I feel like I took four takeaways from that. It says number one, it seems like just tell them a little bit of something about what the game is. So yes, you can link something, but at least give them a little bit of information. 2, drop specific release dates and any specific metrics that you're expecting. 3, deliver assets. So Nick sending those pictures is really helpful to you. And then 4,
I gotta say that's like the best thing.
Okay.
I love seeing what you want.
Okay, sweet. And then finally is number 4, ask for any specifics that you actually need. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and if I may, very briefly.
Yeah, please.
After that, I want to say what not to do.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So what not to do. So I had a recent experience where there wasn't enough specificity in what was wanted. So this board game publisher is a newer indie publisher, and I still had a wonderful experience with them, but they requested that I make like a 5 to 7 minute video. And I assumed from our conversation that what they were wanting was just exposure, just eyes on it. So I'm going to make a different type of video for that. People aren't going to care about all the rules and the specifics, and that every single shot matches what I'm saying, like 100% perfect. Because with board games, that is a lot of work. Okay, so it's not as important. What's more important is that it's a little bit entertaining. So I'll put on my little bee, thingies, and we're going to have fun with this, and you're going to learn enough. Well, that's not what they wanted. So I sent them the product, and they pointed out, there's this error, this rule error, this rule error, and this rule error. And I was like, well, it wasn't to how to play. And usually with a prototype, the rules are wrong because they haven't finished them. That was fine. I went back and fixed it. But what they wanted wasn't eyes. They wanted a video because they weren't comfortable with the video they made. They wanted a video that explained how to play the game on their Kickstarter page. Oh, well, that's a completely different approach. I'm going to be very specific in that. I'm not going to be worried about entertaining. That was a little annoying. I probably spent 12 to 14 hours, and that was not, the fees didn't reflect anything near doing that work, but they were happy in the end. But I would say, please, if you want something specifically, know what you want. Do you want eyes? Do you want exposure, or do you want something on your developers page, or if you're doing crowdfunding, on your crowdfunding page, to give like a brief overview of this is how the game works? Because they are completely different types of content. We can do it all, but please let us know.
Yeah, and for that matter, different channels will generally deliver different types of content. So there are channels that's their entire thing. They're doing how to play videos, but then there's your channel that doesn't really traditionally do that. So I think.
Well, and how to play is different.
Yeah.
How to play versus on your Kickstarter page, an overview of how to play. So you have to know the specifics of exactly what you want and where you want to put it. And if you have a bad creator, they may not know the difference and worry about that. But a good creator will know the difference so that they can make the right thing the first time.
Mm-hmm. That makes a ton of sense. Do you have any other like typical failing points, places that people do that's wrong, things that people do that is wrong?
I think no, that was I just had know what you want, or if you're okay with a wild card, know that you'll get a wild card.
Mm-hmm,
Whatever they make.
I think
So
it's
that's pretty,
yeah. Out
I
of
think
the
that's it.
that sounds good. Out of the YouTubers that I worked with, there were it was interesting. There was a smattering. There were a few of them that I was working with like really intimately. We were talking about exactly what to do. There were a few of them that I just kind of handed them a few assets and then didn't hear from them again until the video was done. And both of those things I think were mostly good. I feel like I got generally better content out of working with them a little bit more intimately. Not helicopter parent level of intimate, but a little bit of back and forth seemed to really help.
Yeah. I did have one last good thing you can walk away from.
Yes.
Kind of, I think this might fit in one of those.
Mm-hmm.
You get to walk away with an indirect critique, at least in the board gaming world. So say a publisher sends me their prototype of a game, and I'm going to make the video for it, so I have to learn how to play it. Well, as the creator of the game, you're going to be accessible for any questions that don't make sense in the rulebook. I assume this would work the same in indie games as well, where the creator might have to reach out if they're not clear on something.
Mm-hmm.
That is a critique. If they have to reach out to you, that means you didn't do something clearly enough, and that's that is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Expect it. But you get this kind of free indirect critique of, and you can respond back, and I've had publishers do this where they're like, oh, it's in the rulebook on page 3. And I'm like, okay, but the fact that I had to reach out to you as a very careful reader, I can see that it's there on page 3. But what that means is the way that you've done this rule book means that the person reading it still didn't get the point, and they may not want to have to flip through all 20 pages to find that one sentence. So you may want to look at your layout. So your content creator isn't going to say all that, but you get these indirect critiques that can be so valuable to future projects to make things easier for you. You know, if they have to ask you a question, totally okay, but take note of it. And I see the good designers and publishers, they do this. They don't take it personal, and they don't come back and say, oh, well, we put it in there, or we went over that in the teach. Okay.
Yeah.
Still had to ask.
That's a wonderful piece of advice. One of the things that we do in our level 3 program is we have people intentionally give each other difficult to hear feedback. And we have a whole practice session where you absorb feedback that normally might make somebody upset. As a designer specifically, but as a game developer of any sort, being able to take that isn't even criticism, being able to hear that there are weaknesses in your game that could use work is an essential skill. And I encourage you to listen to Mike here. That is a value that you're getting out of Mike. Even that's like a part of the dollars you're paying to get a video from Mike, is hearing that there are weaknesses or that something is confusing and that your game could use some improvement. All right, I think I'm hearing. Oh wow!
Question of the day.
It's time for the question of the day, where we ask one of the most important points we learned from Mike to reiterate it, make sure we learn it better. We're also going to do community questions in just a moment. So if you have questions for Mike, drop them in the chat. All right, here is our community question. First person to answer this correctly will get a couple of points. Nice question of the day. Thank you, Wendy. And if you are listening to this episode after the fact, speak the answer out loud for me. What are the 4 best practices for building a good relationship with an indie influencer? And while we're doing that, Mike, I'm going to hit you with the first question of the day because it's a really easy one. It's from Wendy. Wendy, I'm going to ask this one for you because it's very short and sweet. And that is, how many board games do you own, Mike?
What day of the week is it? I for a while I tried to keep it under 100 and have a rotating library. I found that isn't very practical because I like to take videos of things. So I would say I'm probably at 125, and that is a very small collection for a content creator.
Wow.
400 is not unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how many Steam games I own, but it's many.
That's what I was going to say. Is how many Steam games do you have in your Steam library?
Many.
That's probably how many board games I have.
Yeah, many, and they require 0 space. So many.
But probably 125 right now.
All right. I'm going to give a tiny bit more time for the question of the day. All right, there we go. Nabil says, be personable, do your homework, and know what kind of content and vibe they have. Find a content creator who would love your game. Look at the format you want and check if it is growing. Those are all great points. They aren't quite the 4 that I wrote down, but I'm still going to give it to you, Nabil, because that's pretty much on the money. The 4 that I heard was tell a little something about the game, drop release dates and specifics, deliver actual assets, and then ask for exactly what you need. If you want how to play video, tell them that that is what you need. All right. Nabil, let us know which house you want to give those points to in the chat. Wendy is on the stage for the next question of the day, or just regular question. Wendy, would you like to go?
Hey, thanks for asking my first one. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
So, yay, being an educator, I totally agree. That never leaves. For better or worse.
What did you teach, if I can ask real quick?
2nd grade, 5th grade, and preschool.
All right, boy.
Whew,
And now I'm an
I was 10th grade through 12th grade. Okay.
Oh, you were very brave. I did guest teaching in that. I was not brave enough for high school. So anyway, yeah. So I was wondering. So my foray into game development obviously has me very interested in merging those two, education and game development, and would like to, consider starting with actually a board game for one kind of an idea. As a only child for 11 years, it was, interesting making your own fun. And I would have loved having a list of, a YouTube channel like that to, pass the time. So I was just wondering what tips you might have for just starting to think about that.
About developing your own game?
Yeah. And kind of maybe an educational one.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a whole subgenre of educational games, actually. So that's totally successful. Do you have any board game stores near you?
Yes. Luckily, we do have one locally. Yes.
Is it a very good one? Very, very good one?
The very, very good ones are probably a good hour away from me, but definitely accessible, and one I have frequented because they also have really good pizza.
Oh, okay. Because there is one near me, and they actually have, so the kids section also blends with the educational section. And it's not usually very large, but there's, 15, 20 games in there, and it kind of gives you an idea of what's actually selling in a store if you want to sell in a store. I have never actually featured an educational game, so I don't feel comfortable telling you how to develop in that area. But as far as it would go into the children's realm, and I would just look at what's actually in a store. I don't want to misguide you on that, because even on Kickstarter, I've seen people be successful. There's a guy called Brains on Games on Instagram, Brains on Games, and he focuses on educational board games. So
cool. Yeah,
check him out. I'm sorry, I can't help you more with it.
No, that's really good. And, you actually brought up another thing I want to kind of look into on my own is, educational games, because I work in higher ed right now. So, what kinds of things could I do for an adult learner? That's still maybe more, I guess they would call it game-based learning, in higher ed.
Yeah. Oh, well, game-based. Okay. I understand a little more now. I'm sorry. I'm thinking from a design. I'm I'm not a board game designer. I don't know.
No,
got it.
Yeah, you had it.
As far as development, whether you want it corporate, team development, or higher education, breaking apart what I've seen educators do is they will have the kids play, or the adults play a board game. Say pick a easy to find, go buy Pandemic from Walmart. Okay, start with something simple. Everybody has to play the game. Everybody has to identify the mechanics of the game. Now you're going to deconstruct that game, and you're assigned this mechanic. You're assigned this mechanic. You've played a game. You have this assignment to create a game based around that mechanic. We're going to see how different they are, and as long as you pick whatever skill you want. I've seen people do that successfully without having to make and publish an entire game.
Okay.
But you could get there.
Yeah, no, and you actually helped me with an additional question. So thank you for that. Because initially I was asking for, hey, I'd like to create just full stop a board game, for a solo player. And then, you got me thinking game-based learning, and how can I incorporate that into my day job? So thank you for the bonus question.
Yep. And talk to Nick about how hard it is, just to make sure, because you can do it. But solo, small box, just cards only, that's where to start. Let you go.
Great.
Amazing.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Wendy. I will. By the way, I got that advice myself when we went to make Tailmore, which was our first board game, and is way more complicated than Solo Small Box Just Cards. And I now advocate for people starting with Solo Small Box Just Cards for various reasons. Also, in the educational space, to answer that question, because I've designed educational video games, not board games. But another place to start and consider there is you should really be working with actual educators, professors in whatever you are trying to teach. When we were at Lumosity, we had an actual science team that was trying to figure out how to train various aspects of the brain, and working with them was invaluable. You are basically juggling two different professional skill sets, educator and game designer. And I think it is far more viable if you're one of those two. So finding an expert in the area that you want to teach, and then doing your traditional like business stuff, make sure people actually want to learn this thing and will care about learning it. I think will also help you out. All right, we've got two like fun questions. One from Art Muse asks, "What is your favorite part of being a board game content creator?"
Okay. I actually enjoy the content creation part as much as the board game part, right? So I don't play as many board games as other content creators because I also enjoy really trying to develop the content. So one of my favorite parts is actually making the videos, like writing the script. I like writing a script. I like making up a costume or something for it. I just enjoy immersing myself in the whole world of whatever game or whatever topic that we are talking about. The other part is it's cool getting into an industry that I didn't even know existed, 4 or 5 years ago, and getting to meet all these different publishers. And then on the channel, it's neat when something is actually helpful. That's the educator part of me. If something is actually helpful and people like it, like I've got a small, but I've got a very positive little community. So it just makes me happy when they're like, "Oh my goodness, thank you. That I'm glad I found that," or "Thank you for teaching me how to play that. It made it a lot easier." That's the point of it. It makes me happy.
I love that. Yeah, it is it's a journey that I can relate to myself. That moment where somebody is like, "Oh, I get it," is the most satisfying thing in the world. It's interesting that you talk about sort of immersing yourself in each of these spaces. I've been thinking lately. You know how there's method acting? I'm kind of surprised there isn't some term for like method game designing, where you go and you live with the archaeologists or whatever. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
One of my favorite parts
I should never design a game, because I would probably do that, and people would think I went off the deep end. Uh-oh, I lost you again. That's right, Nick. Tell him. Yeah, we can't hear you yet. Does that mean I get to take over? Have I successfully hijacked the stage? Okay. I don't know if he can type in there. Well, I'll tell you what, while you figure that out, I'm going to look at what's being said in this chat. Okay. You lip read. He is saying, I can't read that. Okay, hold on. I'm looking up for questions.
Hello.
We're probably running out of time too. The idea deck for any for creative problem solving. Okay. Oh, I hear you. Thank you. I was starting to panic. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. You do.
learning about bivalves and how shells are formed and like what it means to form a shell, what mineral compositions are in the shells. That's one of the best parts of making games. All right, we have at least one more question from Nabil, and then that might be the last one for the day. I'm going to get Nabil up on stage. Nabil, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can hear you. That is a nice voice, sir. Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. Basically, we're starting this game, and I wanted to ask, like, to reach out to a content creator to help promote your game, would you as a developer need to necessarily have as big as following already, or do content creators at least expect you to have a following before you reach out, or should we just go ahead and do it?
Like I said, we are smaller. When you're reaching out to your smaller indie creators in the beginning, no, you don't have to have a following, because you're reaching out to the content creators to build your following. That's understood.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right.
No problem.
I think that's about. I think it's a good time for us to start wrapping up the episode. So we've got two things that we like to do before concluding every episode of the Indie Game Lunch Hour, and the first is to assign a little homework. So, Mike, what is something that the audience can do in the next week that'll take them about an hour to practice some of what we learned here today?
Okay. It should be kind of fun. You get to do some ethical stalking. It's the only time you really get to do that, and it's okay. So narrow down a content creator on the platform that you like. So pick your short form videos or your picture posts or threads or YouTube. Pick a few content creators that you think will go with your project, and I want you to ethically stalk them. Okay, find them on all their little spots wherever they post, and I want you to look all the way at the very beginning. Look at where they started and how it looked, and hopefully they left those old videos up, right? Because you're not supposed to take them down. It's embarrassing. But go all the way back and look at the progression and see, are they improving in their quality? And see, can you find any videos that they've done that would in some way match your project that was also successful with some level of engagement? And if you find them, that should take you, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 if you're really having fun with it. I want you to actually reach out to them, even if you don't have a project ready. If they've got emails listed, use that. Otherwise, if it's just Instagram and they do DMs, that's fine. Or whatever all you young people are using now. But reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm growing into being a developer, or I am a developer. Whatever stage you are, it doesn't matter. And I just really enjoy your content. And when I have something, I hope I get to work with you. Do you know how happy they're going to be? You've just started a relationship. That's it.
Wow, that's a really beautiful. I love the vibes of this assignment. The really beautiful assignment. So, all right, let me repeat that back. Yeah, let me repeat that back. Make sure I've got that right. So, we want them to find a single influencer on a platform that makes sense for their project. If they don't have a project, perhaps target a platform that just kind of feels right. If you really love YouTube Shorts, you really love TikTok or whatever the hell. Find one influencer on that platform and then ethically stalk them. Go all the way back to the first video, and then move forward from there to get a general sense of whether or not they are improving their quality over time. Try to find at least one video where it really matches your exact game, or if you don't have a game, matches your vibes. And if you do that and you feel good, you're like, yep, this video that has done well really matches what I'm building, then actually reach out and just tell them they're awesome and ask if you might collaborate one day. Does that sound right?
Don't do it in a comment. Yep. An actual message or email or something. So real quick, is it called Aura now? Is that the new vibe?
I guess maybe. Yeah, is it Aura? Audience, tell us. So you've got such a good aura.
Aura.
Wait, I've used that before. It's not that weird. All right, fantastic. What a beautiful homework assignment. So everybody do this, and then what we like to do is force people to post about this. So if you do this and you have that email, you reach out. Just tell us how it went. So tag us on LinkedIn, perhaps. You can reach out to Mike Gray or us, the Indie Game Academy. Maybe come to this Discord. Maybe go to Mike's own YouTube channel and drop some comments there and say, hey, I tried your homework assignment. I built a good relationship with this person, or maybe I got totally ignored. Just tell us how that homework assignment went. All right, it is time to wrap up the episode. Mike, before we say goodbye, is there anything you would like to plug or any last words of wisdom you'd like to give the audience?
I think there's been enough words of wisdom, if we can call it that. You know, there's a plug. If you like solo board games, come hang out with me on the channel. Other than that, nope.
Yeah, go check out Board Games for One with Mike Gray. There will be a link down below. And no words of wisdom. Just keep on doing it.
No
You're
words
doing
of
great.
wisdom. Be happy.
Be happy.
All right.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Mike, and thank you for those who are listening. Thank you for asking your questions live. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we ask that you send it along to just one other person who may enjoy it too. Who is somebody else that is trying to figure out influencer relations that might learn something from Mike here. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for your time. Adios.
Thank you.
And goodbye to the stream.